framework of metrics which allow everybody to see that the company is performing according to the ESG criteria. So the International Business Council of the World Economic Forum has undertaken the task, together with the 4 big audit companies, to develop such a comprehensive system which allows not only a reporting process where companies can be really measured, but which allows also to see progress companies are making, similar to the financial reporting system.
It's a trend that began to accelerate well before the current demonstrations and pandemics. It's just now gone mainstream.
So it's gone from something that is looking at policies and procedures to something that is looking at real-time behavior as it plays out in front of us.
This all falls under what's known as ESG investing, which stands for environmental, social, and governance.
Well, the way we think about it at Bank of America is it basically boils down to environmental, social, and governance considerations that are part of the panoply of considerations that we as investors consider when buying and selling securities.
E stands for environmental, S stands for social, G stands for governance. ESG investing means taking into consideration how a company's environmental, social, and governance performance will affect a company's financial performance, and in turn use that to determine investing in the company. According to a Morningstar Direct report, a record $45.6 billion went into the global sustainable fund universe in the first quarter of 2020. Interest in sustainable investing jumped to 85% in 2019, up from 71% in 2015. Bank of America predicts the money in ESG investing could rise to between $15 and $20 trillion because of changing demographics. More than 2,000 money managers like Black Rock, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan have signed on.
What we think we need to do is start tracking companies' achievements of the goals that they're stating in their corporate sustainability reports, etc. And that's one of the critical differentiating features when it comes to analyzing companies. 3 groups that show up as being most interested in ESG: it's millennials, women, and high net worth individuals.
As corporate executives respond to the current crisis around racial inequality and civil rights, I think that they are implementing a wide range of approaches. Some of that involves corporate philanthropy, but I tend to focus more on what's happening inside the enterprise as well as what's happening at the board level. That's really where the rubber meets the road.
This morning, victory.
Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
And controversy. Leah Thomas, a swimmer on the University of Pennsylvania's women's swim team, has become the first openly transgender athlete to win a Division I NCAA championship.
Hi! Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya! Cheers! Go team! Whatever team you love, I love too. Okay. Love ya. Okay, break a leg.
Hey, Purple, 10 minutes to your big debut.
I'm the new M&M's candy. I'm a little unsure, I have to admit.
Just be yourself.
And you can do it! Nothing else I can be but a purpley peanut-shaped chocolate candy.
She's really peanut-shaped.
Oh, hello. I'm just gonna be me. Because there's really nobody else I wanna be. I'm just gonna be me.
Welcome to another episode of Wednesday Night Live, folks. Thank you for joining me. For our people over at Rumble and also our larger following, actually, at the moment. Rumble's on its way, but our larger following at the moment on Facebook. And of course, whoever YouTube allows to see this. We are also on Twitch, but I do encourage everyone. I have the link for the Rumble channel in the description for the other platforms. So please take a moment, click it, get over there, subscribe. You never know when when I'm gonna disappear on whatever platform you're watching. Today's episode is brought to you by Gender Fluid. Yes, Gender Fluid. Change your gender in a simple sip. I'm just kidding. That was a mock thing that I got from some weird like artistic like mall where they just had all kinds of bizarre stuff. I just thought that would be funny. But that being said, on a harder note, so I almost didn't have this conversation today. I almost went a different path. And the reason was I feel like I'm always talking about Bud Light, but it's really not about Bud Light. It's really about Black Rock, and that's why I wanted to do this. I've been listening to a lot of people. I put out that reel probably a couple weeks ago. And it's been, considering the fact that we're shadow banned, it like somehow slipped through the shadow ban. So, and it was just me walking through. I was just shocked when I walked through a walk-in refrigerator at Bevmo, and Bevmo is just a big beverage distributor. If you're not familiar, if you're not around the California area, excuse my voice, guys. I'm a little hoarse today, but I went in there and I was shocked because it was the end of the week, and I've been going there for years. And at the end of the week, I used to buy Michelob Ultra barrels because it's kind of a neutral beer. If you're going to buy a lot of it, it's the kind of thing that if someone else is there, you don't know what they're going to like. Everybody will drink. So that's what I used to buy, and I always had a hard time getting them. So this time I went in, and there were 4 in there on the last selling. It was on a Sunday. They get their restocks on Monday. I know this because I've been going there for years. So there were like 4 Bud Light kegs, 3 or 4 Michelob Ultra kegs, a Stella, a couple of Budweisers, and 1 Blue Moon keg, nothing else. So it was just telling to me, because I'm trying to keep track on the ground. I'm going to keep following this Bud Light thing because, and I'm going to tie into that, the reason for that in just a moment, because I do see some hope in this protest or boycott. And I never call for boycotts, by the way, folks. So all of those were like, you're calling for boycott of this. I just choose where to spend my money. And so, and I'm happy to see that a lot of other people chose to do that too. But that being said, like, I just choose not to spend my money on things that on companies that aren't aligned with me. And I think that that's the right way to go. That's the right way to do things. And, hey, if the trans community's up in arms about people not buying Bud Light, have at it. Go bring their sales up and try and neutralize it all, whatever. That's the free market. That's how it works. So, but my thing, and the thing that I realized was, and I'm going to break down exactly how this thing works for anyone who doesn't quite understand it. And they think, maybe you think, well, Bud Light's making their money back already, or, their stocks are starting to move back in the right direction, or it's only 1% of their sales, and this and all of that nonsense. And the reality is they're hurting right now. They're hurting. All right. There's an article out today that's showing that, so they're 23% down compared year over year. Okay. And that's a significant amount of money when you're talking, about a beer as popular. It's the number one. Well, for now, it's the number one beer in the United States, but it is about to lose that title. So it's going to be interesting to see who takes it, because they are going to lose that title. And that in and of itself is a story. Budweiser has been the best-selling beer in the country for my entire life, pretty much. So, but not to get off topic. So the reason, there are 2 reasons why people are no longer buying Bud Light. One, yeah, it's the transgender issue, but it's not because of some confused dude on a can. It's because of the effect on children, right? And it's the effect that this has on youth, that there are children mutilating themselves, that there are companies out there fighting to allow these children to mutilate themselves. And this is not something to be promoted. It's just not. And in the end, just because the left got gender identity disorder scrapped from the APA books doesn't make it go away. Like if I erase my name from a piece of paper, it doesn't make me disappear. Right? And so gender identity disorder is a real thing. All right. And they replaced it with a symptom called gender dysphoria. But and which was usually negative symptoms, right? And the reality with the studies that were done on gender identity disorder, and this is one of the reasons they got it taken out of the APA literature, is because 90% or so of children who dealt with gender identity disorder figured it out on their own. Like there was no need to interject, no need to do anything. The diagnosis was made, and then you know the solution was just leave them be. They'll figure it out. So that's one reason. The other reason is people like me, who also am annoyed by that kind of stuff getting rammed in our face. But there's the ESG element of it, and I talk a lot on this broadcast about ESG because that really is the cancer that we're fighting. This is really what we're up against is ESG. And I gave some examples of some of the things these companies do, all for ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. They're looked at as like financial stats. So if you don't score well in your ESG scores, what it boils they'll say, well, there's certain money allocated to invest in companies with good ESG scores. So the idea is if you don't score well, meaning if you don't obey the Marxist ideology, then company investment companies, in particular the big ones, the Black Rocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, the Ernst and Youngs, those, Bank of America, they will not invest in you. They will just not invest in you. And so you get punished, right? So there's a definitive weapon to punish you. And they do that through the arm of BlackRock. Now, the way that most of these things go down is that they basically, because they have to have woke people in high positions, all right? Every corporation does. If you work for one, you know this well, right? Because most of them suck. So it in the end, you have these unqualified people who are there because they're woke, and the order at two ways it could go down. One, if you got a woke enough person, they'll just do it on their own. Or two, they actually will be asked to go ahead and promote X, Y, and Z, lobby in Washington for X, Y, and Z, put out a commercial for X, Y, and Z, etc. Okay, and if they don't do it, the ESG rules apply. So essentially, it's the Black Rocks and the Vanguards, etc., that will stop investing. Now, so most of these companies, okay, hedge their bets, all right, and then once they look at both sides, they decide to themselves, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with the ESG scores. Because what's generally done, all right, even if there's a backlash from our customers, they'll say they'll do this. And the reason is that because once they do it, the customers all, this just happened with Budweiser, as a matter of fact. The stock price plummeted for a little bit. And then when it plummeted, it started to come back up again. A lot of people were going, see, look, it wasn't even because of that, whatever. Well, the reason it starts to come back up again, okay, is that those investment companies start buying stocks again. So basically, we'll use Bud Light since it's popular right now, but you could do this with Coca-Cola's training. You could do this with the M&Ms. You could do it with anything. So they go ahead and they make them do something stupid. The stock price falls. They invest at the lower price, which drives the price back up, and they've now made a grip of money, right? And so they profit off of it, but it's not the profit motive. That's a sidebar. The real point of doing that is the expectation is that it'll blow over, is that this is going to go away. And when it does go away, it won't matter anymore. And then your stock will get back to normal. you'll have jumped your ESG hurdle, and you won't have to worry about it anymore. But in reality, and I see the comments, guys, I'm going to get to some of them in a minute. I just want to get this out. So here's the take, though, right? This Bud thing, I don't think it's going to go away. I think this is now a part of the culture. Is like, I think a lot of people are realizing now for the first time, believe it or not, that Budweiser was not an American company anyway. And that falsehood of like painting, like draping yourself in red, white, and blue, and not even being an American company is kind of, was always kind of a false flag to me. I didn't like it. It bothered me when they sold it. But I still bought the products because I buy other foreign products when it comes to beer and stuff. So I just looked at it like that. But now this one, once people made the decision, it's not just people who are boycotting. It's not just people like me who are just choosing to not spend their money on that or give it to those companies. It's also people who don't care about the issue at all because they don't want to be like, it's not worth it to them. Bud Light's not a good enough product compared to the competition for it to be worth, it's not like, oh, no, it's got to be Bud Light. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. If a bar says we don't have Bud Light, but we have Miller Lite, people go, okay, I'll take a Miller Lite. And this is where it's going to hurt them because it's too easy to just not get it anymore. And so now let's just say this continues, and we won't really know until they report their quarterly earnings, right? That's when you're really going to know, because the stock price is not how you manage that. It is in the end, because if the sales are seriously down, then that will impact it, but that will impact the stock price, obviously. So, but in the end, it's about the sales. How many people are actually going in and purchasing, at that thing? So in Cool Life says the beer is good enough. It's the same jazz, right? It's the same thing, though. It's the same thing. So, and the bottom line is, this is the kind of one that can last, right? If you love, a fast food place, and it's like your favorite fast food place, and they do something stupid, people are more likely to forgive them. But if there's a place right next to it that's the exact same thing, and you didn't really love the place, you just ate there because it was there, it's easy to not go there anymore. And that's my point. And so with that being the case, right now, I just mentioned to you how companies, the investment companies, will come in and save the stock when it starts plummeting from whatever backlash on whatever issue, whatever ESG compliance issue has been issued. And so they prop it back up, but the expectation now is that it's going to blow over. Because if it doesn't blow over, all right, this is important to realize, and it was kind of an epiphany for me when I thought this through. Black Rock, all right, is using other people's money, essentially your money. If you have a 401k or an IRA, or most of that money is somehow funneling through Black Rock, Vanguard, or State Street to invest for you in that fund. All right. And here's the thing. If Budweiser was to report, or InBev in general was to report abysmal sales, right? And I don't think they'll be abysmal, but I think I heard the term 1%. I mean, InBev does about 7.7 billion a year. So, 1% of that's a big number, right? So if it turns out that way and the stocks begin to fall, BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, they're not going to come in a second time and try and save this company. Or and that, when I say save it, I don't mean it's going to be gone, right? It's just going to be less profitable, and that money will never get recouped because there will be no investment firms. Because the reality is, if they're really never going to get that money back, and they really did become toxic to the consumer, then in the end, if BlackRock invests in them, their portfolios are going to lose money, which is going to piss off the only people that could possibly have power over BlackRock if they all got together, which they don't, is the individual investor. And if that's the case, just like anyone, if you've got your money with a management firm and they're not making you money and they're investing in things that are bad investments, you pull it from them. And in the end, that hurts BlackRock. So BlackRock's not going, there's nothing BlackRock loves more than its own money, or other people's money, I should say. So when people start pulling that money from them, they lose that much power. So and the reason why BlackRock has so much money that they manage is because they generally do make money. Now, I would argue the fix is in with BlackRock investments somewhat frequently. This is a company who mingles with the Fed like they're friggin' like two best buddies, walking through the park. So, same with Vanguard and the rest of these doo-doo-doos. So they're not, in my opinion, they're not playing on the level playing field with smaller investment companies. You've got the big four, and then you got those giants, those behemoths. All right. And the big four are private companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, who own just about everything, the majority stake of just about everything in this world, like literally everything in every major company in this world. They're publicly traded. Right. So, but I wanted people to just wrap their head around that idea for future use, because for those, there has to be some way for us to undo this BlackRock, this weaponization of investment firms in general. BlackRock's become the boogeyman for it, but there are more. There are more, and in the end, it's important, I think, for people to understand, when something is successful, and we'll see if this pans out the way that I'm saying, right? Usually, knock on wood, things do. But, this one we'll have to see. It's impossible for me to know. They're going to be putting out the propaganda that, things aren't that bad. Don't worry. Like, you're not going to know for sure until they report these sales. So, once they're reported, though, that stock is going to go one way or the other. They're either going to report that they recovered fully from it, or they're going to report that this is a long-term problem, and that $500 million, in a few months or whatever it may be, that will never be recouped. It will just never be recouped. And if they have to report that, well, then the stock's going to fall. It's not going to crash. They're not going to go out of business, but it's going to be a permanent beating, one that BlackRock's not going to save them from. So what that's going to do is it's going to put Budweiser in a position, all right, going forward. Now, whether or not they can come out, they tried to come out with that Clydesdale commercial. Everybody was just like, it just seemed too soon, I guess. But whether or not they can come back and get themselves back, into a more prominent position, we'll see. But if they can't, the reality is next time they come calling about do this or we're going to do that, well, as they hedge their bets and start thinking, which way am I going to go? They're going to go with the consumer, right? Which is how it should be. Because because they're going to know, like, even if BlackRock helps them initially, it ain't, they weren't there for him the second time. And that's what needs to happen, right? Like they need to put their money in things that are, even when the game is rigged, if nobody's buying it, nobody's buying it. And so, this is a good litmus test, a good throw out, to see what's going on with that. And I got this comment from Wild Stallion over on YouTube. How are you, Wild? It's nice to see someone on YouTube once in a while. So does the Constitution allow for states to deport immigrants and defend borders? What kind of amendment from Article 5 convention do you think can help states with defense? So if you don't know this show, folks, anytime I get an Article 5 question, I always jump to it. So now here we're looking, as far as what kind of amendment from Article 5 can help the states with defense. In this coming convention, probably none. It's important to realize, as important as the border issue is, right? It's important to realize that it has to be on topic, right? And it's hard to put that it's hard to put the border in the context of, like, I got them listed here: term limits, fiscal restraints or balanced budgets, and government overreach. So if anything, it's government dereliction of duty. Now, one thing that Article 5 will do, all right, so completing the process, all right, regardless of what amendments get ratified, completing the process will empower the people in the states. It will be undeniable. At that point, the process is done. all the Soros loonies and the JBS loonies who think it's going to become this circus, and the delegates gain these mystical powers and are going to rewrite all of that's going to be done. So we're going to be in a position, but yet all the millions of people who got with their local legislatures to get the amendments through, those people are still going to be here. And there's absolutely nothing stopping those people from turning around after the convention ends and be like, you know what? Hey, federal government, we're not done yet. and without JBS and Soros and these people in the way, scaring local legislatures out of their constitutional duties and the American people out of their constitutional power, without those people in the way, this would have been done already. That's exactly what's stopping this from happening right now. All right. And I don't say stopping it, but severely slowing it down. So once it's done and the process is in the books and they can stop with all their fear mongering, we could turn around and be like, look, we're going to give you, we're going to give you 6 months to get all we got to do. I mean, the states can just all sit down and be like, yeah, we all agree. I mean, that's a popular enough topic that it can get done quickly. And without the fear, it can get done quickly. Like topics that are that universal can get done quickly, right? The hard thing about getting the Constitution amended, no matter which path you go, whether it's convention of states or through Congress, the hard thing about getting it amended is getting it ratified, right? That's the hard part because 38 states have to be in agreement. So the issue has to be broad. It has to be, universally agreed to, like term limits, right? Like a balanced budget and fiscal restraints, like amendments on government overreach. Those are things that even Democrat voters are in favor of, right? So, we pull up that statistic I always show where there's like 74% are not opposed, like 50.2% or something of Democrats are in favor of the topics, right? These are things we agree on, stuff they never want you to talk about. Now, the Marxists hate this stuff, right? The Marxists hate this stuff. But as I tell you all the time, there's no such thing as Republicans and Democrats. There are Americans and there are Marxists. That's it. That's all there is. Everything else is an illusion. All right? The Americans disagree on certain subjects here and there, but most classic liberals who still, for whatever reason, vote Democrat, even though, the lunatics have taken over the friggin' asylum, like they're still voting Democrat. Maybe it's just I've always done this or whatever the story is. But in the end, those classic liberals who love free speech, love the First Amendment, they're American. They're on the American side. The Marxist side does not have many people on it. And most of them are in their 20s. And may not be on that side when they get to their 30s. So, I mean, in the end, just to shorten it up and wrap it up, we're going to have to call another one, but that one can go quick once this one gets done. Skylab, Churchill Brew. I think he's talking to someone else in the Facebook page, but I don't see a page from Churchill Brew. So, do you know the court case been prepared in God's own New Zealand? No, I don't. The Maori sovereign race, they never lost their sovereignty. They have a court system for your corruption. Bass looking on, or base, I don't know, Bass or base, looking on after planet Earth. A team of lawyers from around the world are preparing the case to be heard there. That will not only take down Big Pharma, but also our puppet government. Much love. Yeah. And you know what? New Zealand's definitely, an awesome place for that. New Zealand, Australia, right? Like I always talk about the fight that we're in here in the U.S., right? Because I focus on Article 5, and I do believe, that like Yuri Bezmenov said, it was very powerful. He was like, talking to this interviewer saying, if you let the United States fall to Marxism, there will be nowhere left to defect to because everything else will fall. Like they've been trying to crack this nut for 70 years now, and they've just been unable to do it. And that's all thanks to the brilliance of our Constitution. Things that living in the United States, I never take for granted. You know, when in the UK, when they pass these hate speech laws, I'm just like, I just look at our constitution and I'm just like, that's just fantastic. When I see them dragging Aussies in the streets, you know, during COVID, I look at the Second Amendment and I'm like, that's just fantastic because they won't pull that here. Nor will there ever be a ground invasion of the United States. You're walking into a friggin' an army packed with over 300 million guns, you know, spread out in every freaking household, nook and cranny. You ain't coming in here to invade. But New Zealand is definitely a top dog. So I hope that that goes through because I think we are all aligned on the topic of big pharma being a major freaking hazard to human existence. And you know, they've been allowed to get away with it for too long. And it's going to be nice to watch that start to fall apart. All right, so we got the Cool Life on Cool Life 56. It's all the same. If it's all the same price, it's going to either be a personal preference or just whatever is there. So that's in reference to the Bud boycott. But yeah, look, Cool Life. It just in the end, it's so easy to not grab the Bud Light. I know because I did it. And it was very, very simple. Like there was no moment of feeling anything in the way of loss. There was just no loss whatsoever. And that's a big problem for them. Is that switching to a Miller Lite? I actually, to be honest with you, so I've been trying different beer. I drank Pabst Blue Ribbon, and I actually like it better. It's one of the oldest breweries in the United States, and I actually like it better. So it's just this. I just never tried it before because it didn't matter to me. They were all the same. So I just got Bud Light because it's what I got, and it is what it is. And you know, Mick Ultra, you know, I got it because it is what it is, and there was no emotional connection. There was no, you know, and I think that's where most people are. But Budweiser has veered so far from what people loved about it. Like I can go on with all the cool commercials they used to do and all the cool stuff that they used to put out there. Like if they were back on that path, like if it's going to take them a while now anyway. I don't know if they can recover from this, but like had they not gone this route and just continued on the funny path, you know, with the frogs, right? Budweiser, right? And like all those Super Bowl commercials and just so many funny commercials, you know, what's up, right? Like if they would have just stayed on that path and continued to cater to their customer base, which really, you know, in essence, the majority of their customer base is the Midwest. It's, you know, even though I'm not on the Midwest, it's, you know, NASCAR, it's, you know, baseball games. It's, I mean, that's where they're, you know, college football, right? Like this is their home, right? This is their home base. This is their core. And they went straight for the jugular on them. So it's just, and everyone thinks it's just simply about this confused dude on a can. Like it's not. Nobody knows who Dylan Mulvaney is. He's got 10 million followers on TikTok. No one knows how many are bots. It's like Twitter. It's people with like millions of followers on Twitter. It's like, really? Like, I mean, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But it's TikTok. It's literally the CCP network. Like there are more bots on TikTok than any other platform. I don't need to run analysis. I can tell you that by nature. And even you know, a million or so that are not bots are 50 Cent Army. If you're not aware what 50 Cent Army is, that the Chinese actually pay, the CCP actually pays 50 cents an hour to like hundreds of thousands of people to do nothing but promote Chinese propaganda on social media networks. They literally just sit there and you can identify them sometimes. There are times where I call them out and they go dark because those are the people who you're like, they're just not rational. Like you're talking about a different issue and they start yelling randomly about Trump or something. And it's like, it's just like, sounds like a programmed response. Well, it is a programmed response. Most of them do not speak English that great. And you'll notice that too. So you see the chop. You ever notice because Chinese translates hard to English. So you see a lot of choppy English and a lot of, you know, just Trump. And you start seeing that, and then you call them out for being 50 Cent Army, and they shut up. They'd be blasting one post after another, and all of a sudden you call them out as 50 Cent Army, and that's it. If they keep conversing with you, they're going to get docked to 25 cents. which is pretty wild, but sure. So let me see. Skylab over on Facebook. The courts invoice Black's Law. All right, Summary Court is based on natural law. Okay. I don't know much about the inner workings of New Zealand court system. Lord knows it's hard enough to to wrap your head around the full breadth of 50 states in the US. But um but all right, it's based on natural law. So that's good because that's similar to our constitution here in the States, right? And this is the answer to the kangaroo courts, my brother Kia Kaka. All right, so I don't understand the Black's law. Is that the courts invoice outlaws them, or because we might have a little bit of lingo difference here, but I think I got the gist of that. Let me see. Leslie, how are you over on Facebook? Good to see you here again. I told my family in 2020 the U.S. was like the last domino standing. Yep, and if we fell in that election, all the other countries knew they would fall for sure. They were pulling for us. They're still pulling for us. Look, there's a lot of propaganda, right, between nations. A lot of propaganda. I can tell you, and we're getting it. It's not like the stuff we're like. Most Americans at this point have identified the propaganda, and because of the First Amendment, unlike some other countries, they can't just eliminate the other information. And this is one of the things that the CCP may want to up it and be like, this is a 150-year war instead of a 100-year war, because this free speech nut is hard to crack. They can't control. They can shadow ban people like me on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever, and YouTube and such. They can not let things show up in search engines, but they cannot remove the information from the internet. Like, they don't have control of the entire internet in that way, because there's always someone out there who says, hey, like a DuckDuckGo, for example, who's like, hey, if Google's going to be playing all these games, with search engines, and I played one time that UN Undersecretary General who straight up said about what she saw about the vaccine on Google, that they went to Google and made it clear that they own the science, and now set it up so that you'll get a bunch of UN propaganda whenever you look up something on the vaccine. She said it right out, like, we wanted people to know that we own the science. And it's like, they're not even shy about it. They're not even shy about it, right? But absolutely, if we fall, it's over, and everyone respects that. I don't think there's any honest person out there who doesn't respect the fact that if the United States falls, and we've got our problems, folks, right? Like, there's nothing worse than one of these BRICS folks trying to beat you up over crimes your government commits, and in some sense that some of it's not propaganda. That's the military-industrial complex is real, right? Our own presidents knew about it, warned about it. One was killed by it. Like, there's or could have been killed by it, right? So spare me, YouTube. All right, could have been killed by it. But in the end, you've got Reagan took a bullet. Everybody who kind of went their own path seems to have taken a bullet. And there's a lot worse stuff that goes on overseas. So there's definitely a gripe to be had with America and the way that we've used sanctions, right? But in the end, when it's all said and done, replacing it, like the remedy to fix that is a better path than there is no fixing the CCP. There's nothing fixing that. Like, we can call a convention of states. We can get this animal under control. We can reel in this government. We just got to understand civics. We got to understand our own government. We've been dumbed down for 70 years. We've got to get back into the groove of knowing about how our system works, understanding that presidents in the United States are not the most powerful people in the country. Congress, Supreme Court, not the most powerful people in this country. The most powerful people in the United States, the most powerful politicians, are your local state legislatures. The system is designed that way purposefully. And the people were duped into backing the 17th Amendment, which is disgusting. And that could be addressed in a convention of states, because it does fall under government overreach. Senators are supposed to be appointed by state legislatures. Why? Because they need to be able to pull them out when they suck. But they duped everybody by telling them, "Oh, but look, this is democratic." And I just got done venting about calling this a democracy, a democratic republic, all of that BS. Trump does it. They all do it. Everybody does it because it's been ingrained in our culture to stop us from understanding what this country is. There's not even a trace of the most rudimentary relationship. It is the most distant and far off relationship. That small connection in the idea that people are governing themselves. The entire process is diametrically opposed to democracy. The founders spoke about it frequently. It drives me nuts. But I appreciate that, Leslie. Appreciate the comments always. Let me see here. Got going on. And it is Mern. My convention estates people are jumping in the house right now. How are you, Mern? Welcome back. Welcome back. I was just in Jersey, actually, for non-fun purposes. I had to go to a memorial for my uncle, actually in Long Island, but I stayed in Jersey with my brother. But I ate a lot of bagels. Definitely ate a lot of bagels. All I do when I go to Jersey is eat. That's all I do. I just eat. A lot of pizza, a lot of bagels. Those two things and some diner food. All those check boxes have to be hit before I leave Jersey. So, all right, let me see what we got. So, sorry, folks, but I don't have a producer, so I have to like vet these comments. Before I've been caught from time to time just pulling up a comment, and then it's like some bizarre like nonsense. All right, so the Cool Life is over on Twitch. So this is when I talk to Chinese bots. It's always about how the Americans, how the Americans are warmongers and America's collapsing is better for everyone. Yeah, exactly. That's when you hear that kind of stuff. And even folks, just so you know, so you don't get down on yourself, when you see stuff come up in your Google feed, right? For those of you who have Android phones, I don't have an iPhone. I'm not a big Apple fan, but for the Android phones, when Google puts stuff in your feed, that side feed, you're seeing stuff like, China has figured out fusion, and China has has perfected the hypersonic missile, and the U.S. is so far behind, and all of that is propaganda. All of it. So just know that when you're reading it. Okay, like the fusion thing. I just had something come up. The way they worded it was like China has created their own sun. It's just, and as I read it, it was the same fusion tech, the same breakthrough, which was significant but fairly minor as far as like actually having fusion. But it's the same one that we went through. Like, here's the thing: they've just got people, and this is a big problem. They've just got people in all of our labs everywhere across the world, right? So they've infiltrated the West from an education standpoint because they don't innovate anything in China. You cannot in a communist system. Nothing gets innovated in a communist system. The Soviets weren't innovating anything. All of that tech was stolen. All of it. All right. And from the spy tech to the freaking to the firepower to the choppers, the plane, all of it. And the handful of things, once in a blue, they'd come out with something, right? Once in a blue, they'd create a warplane or, something like that. And it was all at gunpoint. Like, it was all at gunpoint. Screw this plane up and pow, pow, right? Pew, pew, pew. like the massive innovation that comes out of a free society just doesn't exist in these places. So if you ever see that stuff, don't get discouraged. China's a hot freaking mess right now. And that's real talk. Their people don't believe that. All those bots that they put out there will tell you it's the greatest thing ever. Even Brazilians and others in the BRICS countries are like, they believe all this nonsense. They honestly think that because the U.S. is unfair with its sanctions, which it is, but they think they think China's not going to be running that show. They think they're going to have some sense of autonomy in that show, which is insane. And the Russians need to look at that too. What Putin's doing, I have no idea. I realize he needs to ally with them. It's out of necessity, but like they ain't looking at him with any kind of respect either. So that's important to. And Skylab is saying over in New Zealand, look into it. I will, Skylab. I will. I'm going to go back to the comments afterwards and go and take a look and kind of get myself up to speed on that, on my never-ending quest to know absolutely everything there is in the world. You could say I should get a life, but it is what it is. So Leslie over at Facebook, I watched the Canadian Freedom Fighters podcast. Just finished a few minutes ago. He's proudly wearing a Trump 2024, Make America Great Again. Yeah, and look, people are cheering. The world loved Trump when he was here, okay? Like the world loved him. World leaders loved him. Right, the Marxists, the globalists, they couldn't stand him, true. And those are the only people that you will see on the news and in the media, true. But the reality of the matter is, and maybe Skylab can validate this for New Zealand. If we got anybody else overseas on, we're all getting fed our own brand of propaganda soup, right? We're all getting this garbage shoveled in our mouths. I don't know, I don't know how much information they can control in a place like New Zealand, or I know they can do a pretty hard job of it in Australia. I know they can do a pretty hard job of it in the UK. In the US, there's a limited amount they can do. They can only mess with you really on social media. And even then, the government needs to be hands clean. So if they get caught, like they just did with the Twitter files, yes, nothing happened to anybody, but they're one good president away and one good convention of states away, right? Because the term limits will clear out all the old people in the deep state too. It's not just elected officials. It's for all officials in the government. So all those, that real creepy guy who's like not the director, right? CIA director is just a figurehead. It's the dude right below him who doesn't get appointed by the president. So he doesn't change. And he just hangs in there, and each director comes in, and that creepy dude, he's the one that chills with the men in black, does the black budgets, does all the creepy stuff. Explains to the new director how things work. New director just does whatever the hell he's told. That guy, gone. So, we got some cleaning to do, right? But I'm curious to know what other countries are like in that respect. And then Mern says grassroots is the only way. Absolutely. And this is what makes convention of states so important, folks. Like this is what makes, once you get yourself passed, right? Because let's face it, if you're in the US, you have to reteach yourself civics. Like you have to reteach it to yourself. It's disturbing how many, and it doesn't matter, if they're a classic liberal or a conservative or, whatever. People don't know the Constitution. People don't know exactly how the government works. Too many people are sitting there expecting Trump to come in, on a white horse and save us. The only impact really on the major issues that he will have is on the border, which is a big one. I acknowledge that's a big one, right? Well, the border and putting it to China a little bit. But beyond those two things, the internal stuff that we need to change this country, presidents just can't do. They just can't do it. There are just 100 years of bad Supreme Court rulings that just added in more power until we've got this behemoth that stands before us, and there's no president that's going to be able to just walk in there and clean that up. There's nobody you can elect that will not get eaten alive by the system in a matter of months. I don't care if you personally know the person you're voting for, and you grew up with them, and they're the most honest and honorable person you will ever meet. They will be in that government for 3 to 6 months and be gone. And if they're really hardcore about doing the right thing, they'll just leave because there ain't no changing it. And there is changing it, but there ain't no changing it that way. At this point, right, the federal government is the child of the states. We created this animal, all right? And throughout its childhood, we allowed it to run around and play ball in the house, and it broke mama's vase on multiple times with by playing ball in the house, and nobody ever spanked it. And Article 5 was specifically put in the Constitution, specifically for that one reason. There's no other reason to use it. It was put in there specifically to pass amendments that the federal government would never pass on its own, which are only amendments that restrict its power. That's it. That's it. There is nothing that the globalists, Marxists, CCP, nothing that they fear more. You think they don't know about Article 5? They know about it. They know damn well what it is. They're watching it like free. They're watching it close. They ain't going to talk about it because they ain't trying to give it play. But you'll hear it when we get to 25 states. We get to 25 states of the 32 needed. You will start to see. You will start to see the full guns come out, bashing it, talking about how reckless it is, talking about how it's going to end the country. But folks, anyone with half a brain knows we're already on that path now. And it's not even just about us. It really is about the world. Like it is. Because if we get it together, countries like the UK and New Zealand, and these are our brother and sister countries out there in freedom. Like these countries will have something to invest in. These countries will have something and the CCP will not. And without large nations like the United States to parasite off of, they'll fall. Like all communists, we just sit back and watch them. It's only a matter of time before the Soviets fell. It wasn't brilliant. It was brilliant to understand that you could just wait and they'll fall. And Reagan understood that very well. Just wait. It's unsustainable. They will fall. If we don't help them, they will fall. And China was in that situation more than once. So Skylab over on Facebook, look into maritime admiralty law. Then get what you register your kids at birth. It makes them a corpse lost at sea, corporation, and then parents. All right, well, I got to look into that a little more. I'm not sure. I don't want to too much into things that I'm not fully aware of. Jesus, how are you? Jesus H. Christie. All right. Sounds like a Jesus H. Christ reference, which I'm not even sure that I'm educated enough to know what the H was supposed to stand for in Jesus H. Christ. But it's the Lord's name in vain. I'm already halfway in the handbasket right now, so I got to cut it out. We got Mern saying, sorry for your loss. Yeah, I appreciate that, Mern. My uncle was the last of my father's siblings, and he was we weren't totally stunned by it, but it is a loss, so I appreciate that. Jesus says Bud Light is terrible tasting regardless of who's promoting it. Yeah, I don't, like I said, I was saying earlier, Jesus, that when it comes down to it, I didn't with Bud Light. It was I'm indifferent to it. And I think that's where most people stand, is they're just indifferent to it. It's just that beer you get when you're not alone, right? 'Cause you're not just at a restaurant ordering a beer. You don't order Bud Light then, right? You get Bud Light when you're buying a bulk pack, like a 30 pack or, an 18 pack, and you're going to hang out with buddies and you don't want to deal with who likes what beer. So you just grab Bud Light. It's because it's like socialism. Right now, everyone equally gets a shitty beer. That's funny. Warren Owen on Facebook. How are you, Warren? The USA has more members in the World Economic Forum than any other country. I hear different American politicians talking about every different topic, but who's talking about WF foreign influence in your country through the World Economic Forum? Yeah. And Warren, this ain't your first rodeo, hearing me rant about this stuff. But when I would say 8 months ago or so, I was really heavy on going all in on the Great Reset and WEF. And I still am on it. I still think Klaus is one of the creepiest human beings alive. And that stuff still bothers me. But I've come to realize, and it will take an enormous amount of evidence to make me believe otherwise, that's all being operated through the CCP. Like that whole organization, I went through that in my head for so long. Why would the WEF be taking actions that are hurting the American dollar? Even if they want to bring their digital currency in, it doesn't make sense. They could still just use the American dollar and make the transition that much more stable. But then at the same time, you're helping China by knocking our dollar down. And if China, China is not going to be a part of any globalist anything unless they're running it, right? I think we could all agree on that. China is not going to engage in any of this WEF nonsense. Like, they're training soldiers over there. They're training people they're not teaching their kids this bullshit that we teach our kids. Their version of TikTok doesn't have the lewd pornographic stuff that it does here. No, because demoralization is what they're doing. They're simply doing, they just picked up the ideological subversion, playbook from the Soviets and just continued it when the Soviets fell. And that's about the right time, because they weren't strong enough to do anything before that. So they just picked that ball up and ran with it. And they've been pretty, well, it's not even that they've been so effective. We've been so asleep. But now I think since 2020, it's kind of put us in a different place. I think people are definitely, it's a different animal for them now. It's an uphill fight. And Mernz is in the fight of my life right now, trying to save some farm ground from the warehouses taking over Jersey. Get to know your locals. Yeah, they will come and help you. Just ask. Yeah, for sure. And, I'm sorry to hear that, right? So farmland is getting taken out in large swaths here in the U.S., for our international viewers, right? We all know the Bill Gates of the world buying all that farmland, but wealthy people in general are buying real estate, period. They're all investing in real estate. And so I am not a financial advisor, but I can tell you, I too am trying to get everything I can get out of the bank and into rental properties. Because to me, like, people are like, oh, buy precious metals. But I'm like, dude, if it hits the fan and these guys really do win this thing, and they really do, create this society with, universal basic income and all that kind of nonsense, like, no one's finding a job. So you're going to be dependent on the government, and you're going to be renting, because the housing market is going to be controlled by them. So the only people who are going to win are the people who own land and own property and are collecting that rent that they can spend their universal basic income on. While my generations and the children ahead will just continue to let it snowball and invest in other properties and continue to grow that. Because there ain't going to be many places you can work. I can tell you that. Not for us, Gen X, but for Gen Z, it's going to be tough sledding for Gen Z. That I can tell you. If you got grandkids, they ain't going to grow up in the world you did. Even if we win this fight, they ain't going to grow up in the world you did. That's for sure. So this is, who are they? I have to go back and look at I'm not sure when I said they. So folks, when you're leaving comments, keep in mind, I might not get to it immediately. So if it's directly on something that I said, then, try to articulate the point a little bit, because I'm not always in the moment. And, but here on Twitch, we got, so the yuan will never be the world currency. No, it won't. But the yuan will be most likely the currency for half the world. So China, the BRICS countries, and there are other countries joining on. However, I do believe many of those countries, especially Saudi Arabia is going to be like, no, we're still friends with the U.S., but we'll be friends with you too. They're just classic at playing both sides of the fiddle and kind of doing what they got to do. But really, it's a matter of hedging bets, right? So I can't even blame, the Soviets. I'm aging myself again. I can't even blame Russia and China and Brazil and these other countries for hedging their bets away from the United States, because we've been real bastards when it comes to the way that we've used our power over the fiat currency has been no bueno for the people around the world. And it's not about whether you think, oh, well, that was the right thing to sanction. This is the wrong thing to sanction. You shouldn't be doing that stuff at all. You're the keeper of the world's currency. And it's not just the country you're sanctioning that gets mad. Other countries realize they could do that to us too. They don't like that. They don't want to live like that. Now, mind you, the irony of moving it all over to China, thinking that they ain't gonna do that is kind of, I mean, that's naivete on kind of another level, but it is what it is. But I think you're right. It's never going to be the global currency like the fiat, in any way. It won't. Let me see. All right. Says, I doubt the BRICS currency that they come up with would be the world currency. China's stockpiling gold right now, and the propaganda in China is that they're going to back their currency with gold. But if you ever hear someone say, you'll hear that from the bots, from from people who read those Google things that come up and they think it's like real news. Like those people will buy into that sort of thing. There's no way on earth the Chinese back there. They're buying gold for sure, because there is still some security in having gold in the bank, but they're not backing they're going to the digital yuan, and they're not going to back that with gold. Why? Because you give up control when you back it with gold. Like you just got to look at who you're dealing with, right? There's no way China gives up control of manipulating its own currency. If you back your currency with a commodity, any commodity, if you back it with that commodity, the only thing that's going to adjust the price of it is the scarcity of that commodity. That's it. You can't print more gold, right? You can't slap a few strokes in the keyboard and suddenly you got, another room full of gold. You got to go mine that. There's no way on earth that they are going to a gold-backed currency. And that being said, the U.S. should start seriously considering, doesn't have to be gold, but commodity-based currency. And if it's going to be digital, it needs to be blockchain. Now, I heard some doo-doo chick call CBDC blockchain. It's not blockchain. CBDC is just chain. It's just a straight link straight to the Fed. That's it. And they're building the infrastructure for it now. Fed Now is coming out in July. It's not Fed Now in and of itself is not what's ushering in CBDC, but the capability that comes with it is going to be the platform that CBDC gets launched on. Like it's like Zelle, if you haven't heard of it. It's like Zelle and Venmo, but it's on steroids. Like now businesses are going to be incentivized to pay this way. So unlike Zelle, it's going to be the Fed now that's in the middle of your transaction. And as time goes on, the banks just get pushed to the side, and now it's just you and the Fed. And every transaction you do will be recordable, right? And then when it goes fully digital, it'll be programmable. And then that's when creepy days begin. Again, all falling in line, like these carbon scores that they talk about. When I say they this time for Cool Life, when I say they talk about, I'm talking about WEF, UN, etc. When they talk about these carbon scores that they're going to implement, they're the same thing as the Chinese social scores. It's the same thing. That's not a coincidence. This is why I say China is running this whole show. They're going to rebrand everything, but they're running this whole show. And people should start understanding that there is a great enemy in this world. There is a great evil in this world. And it is the CCP. It's been the great evil in the world for many years. Only now it's emboldened. And being emboldened, it's a problem. That's a problem. And that was one of the great things about Trump. I'm sure DeSantis, if DeSantis won, he would be on the same boat. We need a person like that who's going to go in there and lock horns with this Xi Jinping dude and expose the weakness of China. Like it's important that a president gets up there and explains that, they're in economic duress. Their economy is collapsing. It's a paper freaking tiger. Yeah, they're buying gold, but that didn't save their real estate market. The entire thing fell down. The entire thing. Like it was a complete housing bust. Nobody hears about it unless you look into that kind of stuff. But it's there. And I know it because I follow Epic Times and they always give you the skinny on China. Always. There's nobody better than the Epic Times when it comes to reporting on the CCP. Nobody. Epic TV, all of it. The documentaries that they do, the whole 9 yards, they're all over it. And for those of you, for my boomer folks out there who are disenchanted now, disenfranchised because you realize Fox is just full of crap, and now you're like going to Newsmax, but it's not really. Look, Epic Times. If you're watching this and you're a boomer, you figured out enough tech to be able to watch Epic TV and catch the documentaries there. Yeah, you got to subscribe, cancel your Netflix subscription or one of these other Duke-to-Do subscriptions. It's less than $10 a month, $6, $7 a month. I mean, and the reality is you're probably paying for something that you get information from that's giving you crap information. So spend that money wisely. I always recommend them because it's not easy to find a place that's trustworthy and a place that does investigative reporting and a place that actually breaks stories, right? Break stories, not off Twitter, but actually breaks stories, like researches and does. I mean, the Epic Times, I talk about it all the time. They had the documentary on the Wuhan lab leak in April 2020. April 20, all that drama that we went through about Wuhan lab leaks, and they put out a full documentary in April 2020, 1 month after it started. Had the whole thing locked up. Had the whole thing, broke it down, exactly the path, who the doctors were, Bat Lady, the whole nine. They had it all. It's a legitimate news outlet. And if you're tired of just getting told nonsense or not being told important stuff at all, that's where you need to be. So this is 100% agreed. China's economy is based off the fake numbers. The Western investment, the West stops investing within a year. They go through a big economic depression, and their citizens will probably try to overthrow their government. Yeah, their citizens really do believe that they're powerful, but they're not. And it's true, their entire existence. They have come to the United States. They've almost hit rock bottom like 4 times now. Each time they've done it through the 70s, 80s, they did it with Nixon, where the Soviets were about to whoop them. But they talked, even though they didn't have the power, they were talking about world dominance back then. But they were afraid of the Soviets for a while because they were too poor. So they came to Nixon, befriended him, and basically hired a friggin' bodyguard to protect them from the Soviets. And then they came back again, and did that whole cowboy thing in the 80s with, again, it was just a matter, they were economically collapsing. We need to befriend the United States. And the United States, some of it was corruption. Some of it was just in our nature, is like we keep thinking that everybody wants to be, everyone wants to be like us. And it's arrogant, of course. But I think a lot of countries think that way, though, right? And we keep thinking, they see our success. They want to be like us. They never once wanted to be like us. They wanted to be totalitarian. They wanted to be able to continue to murder whoever they want to murder. They've always been that way. Of course, Tiananmen Square happens, and we all see it, right on the front burner. But but anyway, just to recap the main topic that I started on, and I do appreciate folks. Before I wrap this up, I want to make sure everybody. There's a link in your description, no matter where you're watching from, unless you're already on Rumble. But there's a link in your description to click on that will take you to my Rumble page, the Rumble channel. And I would very much appreciate it. It would help me greatly if you would click the subscribe button there. I would tell you the Rumble app is definitely worth having anyway. Most quality content has already left YouTube. Anything left there, and I know that I'm on YouTube, but I've been suspended 7 times. So I may not be there next week. So if you're watching me on YouTube, and the Rumble app has really cleaned itself up some, so you get alerts now, and it's its user interface is better. So, but I am trying to grow the Rumble channel. With 16,000 followers plus it's almost 16,100 on Facebook. I'm trying to get people to migrate over to Rumble. It's not easy because it's not always the same. People that use Facebook don't always, don't always translate to Rumble, but I'm asking you to, and you'll thank me for it in general, because Rumble has great content on there. It's true that they do have some of the doot-da-doos on there with the crazy clickbait conspiracy theories, but hey, that's free speech, right? You will also get the real deal, right? And that's where you won't get that on these other platforms, or you'll never get alerted to it. Mern, love you too. Thank you so much. All right, folks. If you haven't been able to hear, my voice has been in terrible shape. I've been trying to recover from it, and I knew that this was not going to help the issue. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it close to the hour this time. Sometimes I take these an hour and a half, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who was commenting. I appreciate your engagement. These Wednesday night lives, I really do enjoy doing. I like to get the back and forth going. Of course, I can yap all day, so if I have to yap, I will. But I love the days where we get some activity and get some people, chiming in. And the folks on Rumble, all right, so Rumble never really gets too active with comments, but like the live chat box is right to the right of the video, and I can't highlight those comments the way that I do with, and I think this is why that the chat room doesn't really engage as much, but like, because I can't put the comments up on screen. Rumble doesn't integrate with that yet, but they'll get there. But don't let that stop you. I keep a Rumble page open on my side screen, and I will respond to your comments as you make them, answer any questions, of course, on Article 5. All right, folks. Until next time, I'll be back next week. I'll try and get some piece of content out this weekend. I'm kind of crazy this week, but I'm going to try and get something out in between this week. We'll see how that goes. Until next time, folks, I'm out.
And like that,